And it's actually about traveling.
Yeah.
That's what I most consciously use the law of attraction for. So
Hmm.
I use, I guess, the law of attraction in my daily life, but I also very much like believe in like angels and guides. And
Yeah.
like I talk to them all the time and
Yeah.
like ask for signs and for them to bring me things and whatever.
Hmm.
So I think that the most conscious thing that is almost strictly just like the law of attraction would be
Yeah.
traveling for me.
Right.
And this year I've traveled 3 times, which was not very likely because I
Yeah.
didn't really have an income when I came out here because I'm a master's student and
Uh-huh.
I'm just like living on what I have and my rent is like over 1,000 a month and it was just like unlikely and
Yeah.
like all of these things happened for it to work out. So
Great. Yeah. So I think traveling is a great story because I think a lot of people want to travel, or at least they say they want to travel, and then they don't do it for one reason or another. But it's
yeah.
definitely, um, yeah, it's a good manifestation. It's a cool thing. What made you feel like you wanted to really see the world? What made you feel initially like, hey, I really want to do this?
So I think that my travel dream started really young.
Hmm.
My grandma traveled a lot for her work. It was a healer.
Hmm.
She was based out of Sedona, Arizona, which is like the spiritual center of, I don't know, maybe the world, but at least America. And she would just travel mostly the U.S. I know she got to go to some other countries, but I was too young to really remember those times. And I just remember thinking, whatever job I have when I'm older, I want to travel. Like I don't want to feel stuck somewhere.
Hmm.
I like having a home, but I really like going places. I really like experiencing other cultures. And then
Yeah.
when I was in college, I was studying international studies for my degree. I ended up with a degree in Spanish
Hmm.
simply because of where international studies took me.
Hmm.
I ended up studying in Spain, and then I ended up studying in Mexico, and then I stayed and lived in Mexico teaching. Now I'm in LA and I feel a little bit stuck, but it's a
Yeah.
master's degree. It's a
Yeah.
4-year program because it's
Yep.
acupuncture. It'll be a while,
Okay.
but I just always felt like that would really make up a large part of my life.
And was there sort of a turning point where you thought, you know what? I really want to travel. I'm ready now, and I want to start trying to make this happen through like visualization or through positive thinking or something?
So I would say that it happened right after I had a really negative experience. So I was
Mm.
working at a job where I just felt like I have to leave here. I think it was because other people around me were getting a pay raise, but they were all full-timers.
Mm.
But I was skilled in the same thing and
Yeah.
I did not get a raise. And it was like, you know what? I deserve more than this. I don't
Mm.
appreciate, that I'm being, worked the same, but not paid the same. And I just made the decision that I wasn't going to be at that job anymore.
Hmm.
And so I started doing a couple of job interviews, and all of them were terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
kind of like nightmare interviews.
Yeah.
And one of them was a complete nightmare. It was walked out of this guy's office. It was at my university campus. But as I walked out of the office door, I felt like I needed to turn around, and I turned and I looked at this shelving that was next to the door, and it had all of these brochures for study abroad programs.
Mm.
And I just looked at the Spain one, and I just grabbed it, and I was like, I'm going to Spain. I
Yeah.
have no idea how I'm going to go to Spain,
Yeah.
but I'm going to go. And I just, at that point, I had been introduced to affirmations and positive thinking, and I was like, I'm going to go. I don't know how, but the universe knows how, so I'm
Yeah.
going to do it.
Hmm.
And it worked out, and I applied for the program. I got a small scholarship for it, and I also had to take out a private loan for it.
Hmm.
But it all just like clicked into place.
Did it seem like a long shot at the time? I mean, when you just saw a brochure and you decided, hey, I want to go to Spain, did it feel on some level? I mean, obviously you're really inspired to go and, there's something, it stirred something in you, but at the same time, your practical situation, did it seem like it wasn't the most conducive, maybe, to
It
traveling
did.
at that time?
It
Yeah.
did, yeah. It did feel a little like, what exactly am I doing? Where am I going after this? Like, how does this contribute to getting my degree? How does this contribute to my future? I had a relationship at the time, and that's hard to leave.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of, I guess, obstacles, but
So how were you able to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go with my gut. I'm going to follow my inspiration? Because I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people who want to travel.
sure, yeah, that's true.
How were you able to trust yourself, I guess?
Right. I think, honestly, I think that I was most because the feeling of going for it was better than the feeling of staying where I was. When I
Yeah,
thought about staying at that same job,
yeah,
it was it wasn't even a comfortable feeling. Sometimes we get
yeah,
stuck in
yeah.
comfort, but it was just like, okay, I'm still making money and I'm still doing a job that I like, but I'm feeling less than people around me. I don't
Hmm.
feel, I don't feel paid well enough. And when you don't feel that you're paid enough, you're not really contributing good work
Yeah,
because that whole time that you're at work, you're thinking really negatively and it's pulling down the energy of you and everyone around you.
right. Yeah, so just going with your feeling. You felt one way and, you kind of were able to trust that. That's cool. Um, so once you really made that commitment that you were going to travel, you were going to go to Spain, did it seem like these things like I know you said you took a loan out and everything, did they kind of fall into place, or what sort of practices were you using at that time to visualize it and everything?
So I think that mostly I was focusing on the language,
Hmm.
and for me, that put me there.
Yeah.
So the way that I really learned Spanish was watching Harry Potter movies, but turning on Spanish.
Oh,
And
really?
I knew them so well that I knew the lines that would be going
Hmm.
on. And
Wow.
so I would really pull words from the sentences. And even if I didn't know what certain individual words were, I knew what the gist of the sentence was. And I could be like, oh, okay, you know what? That word probably means giant because I know all the
Hmm.
other words and I know
Yeah.
what that line is in English.
Yeah.
And so when you listen, or at least when I listened to that language every day, it was it was something I didn't hear where I lived in northern Kentucky at the time.
Yeah.
I never heard Spanish every day. I heard my
Yeah.
Spanish teacher speak in Spanish, but to really feel like that all the people around you are speaking the language is a completely different experience. You hear different inflections, different tones, different accents, different, just all these different ways of speaking, and they kind of like fill up your experience, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, this is a real life somewhere. And I
Right.
just felt like I was heading toward it, like I was about to
Right.
be steeped in it.
Yeah, that's cool. Like you found a real way to immerse yourself in this new environment that maybe you weren't in physically, but in your imagination, you could really feel like you were there because you were studying the language and you were studying these things. That's pretty cool. So when the first time you actually got to Spain, how did it feel? Was it cool?
I mean, it was very surreal
Yeah,
because I mean, you just sleep on this flight and you wake up and you're somewhere completely different.
yeah,
It was pretty surreal, but it was also it just felt like I was supposed to be there.
yeah.
It was a very concrete feeling. It was like, well, of course I'm here. Duh.
Right,
Um,
right.
and I think that it was almost like I feel like you almost have to visualize something and kind of carve out a place for you. Like you kind of
Mm,
have to think like who's going to be around me? Who am I going to be around? Because if you don't think about those things ahead of time, sometimes I think you can almost like get in your own way and end up around people that aren't very helpful to your situation. But I ended up in the perfect house with the
mm.
perfect like family situation. Everything just was perfect. It was really an interesting, great experience.
Well, that sounds really exciting. I mean, I've never been anywhere like that, that's for sure. How long did you end up staying there?
It was a 3-month trip. Exactly. So I lived in the city the whole time.
Okay.
The one thing that I think I could have worked on visualizing was a little bit of travel while I was there.
Yeah.
A lot of us really take advantage of being
Yeah.
to, France and Britain and everywhere. And I said to myself, I can just afford to study while I'm there. But I think maybe if I had kind of pushed it a little and been like, I can afford to do whatever I want while I'm
Uh-huh.
there or something, I
Yeah.
might have been able to. But still living in the city was amazing because,
Yeah.
I lived in a different city for 3 months. I, became one of those people. I lived exactly like they did.
What city was it again? I'm sorry. What?
It's Segovia
Oh,
in
okay.
Spain, which is about 45 minutes north of Madrid.
Oh, okay. Nice. And you stayed with like a host family or something, you said? Yeah.
Yes, I stayed with a woman. We would call the people that took care of us like our senoras because it was almost always a woman
Mhm.
and sometimes a family. But in this case, she was, I think, a widow, and she just had her granddaughter with her, who was really great. She was around our age. There was another girl staying in the same room with me, and yeah, it was just perfect. That little family was perfect for us.
Nice. So I know you said that if you could do it again, maybe you would tweak the manifestation a little bit, which is cool because we all live and learn, and we're constantly discovering new things about what we want and what we value. So I'm just curious, do you have any new goals right now that sort of you're working on or new places that you want to travel? Or maybe
So
you're
right
happy and
now,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no, that's okay. So right now, I would say that I don't necessarily have any short-term travel goals because I'm so focused on my degree right now.
Hmm.
But I definitely have longer-term travel goals because I I know that I don't want to live in one place for very long.
Hmm.
And even when I'm ready to get settled somewhere, I know that I want to keep up the traveling
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So, for instance, right now I'm visualizing myself after graduation from my
Hmm.
school, and after that, I plan to work on cruise ships.
Hmm.
And when I discovered that there was a place for acupuncturists to practice on cruise ships, I was just sold immediately. I was
Yeah.
like, "That's great! Like that will be excellent."
Yeah.
Because it's hard to practice in other countries because you have to pass the boards at every place and
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
establish yourself.
Yeah.
And so this was like, just like a door opening. I was like, okay,
Right.
that's going to be great for a while. I'm
Yeah.
also really interested in writing and, of course, doing my videos on YouTube. And so I feel
Yeah.
like eventually I could do more travel with things like that
Yeah.
and just manifest more
Yeah.
adventure opportunities.
I think that whole cruise ship thing is awesome. It's always cool to hear about new jobs that you've never considered before. It's just sort of like, yeah, if you follow what you're interested in, you will find a way to make money at it. And there are so many unconventional jobs out there that a lot of people never even think of and never even consider. That's a really cool one that I didn't even know existed though. Acupuncture on a cruise ship though. But yeah, it combines everything perfectly. Your love for helping people in medicine and the travel, and it gets, it's like a loophole in the whole, like you said, qualifications for being an acupuncturist. So that's
Yeah.
perfect. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Really
and I
awesome.
didn't even know it existed until probably 4 months into my schooling here. And I was
Yeah.
already starting to wonder, like, oh, am I going to be tied somewhere for a really long time?
Yeah. Right, right. Cool. Well, thank you very much for sharing the story. I really enjoyed it. Do you have any final tips maybe for someone who wants to travel and they haven't been able to do it yet?
Yes. So I think that the first thing that you need to do is change a couple of the beliefs that you've been told your whole life. The first one that I worked on in order to travel without any problems was whenever I travel, I am safe. Because we hear so often so many things about just that would make you fearful of traveling, even just the act of traveling. You're like, what if my bags get lost? What if this happens? What if? Don't, focus on those. Focus on, I'm always safe when I'm traveling. I always get to where I need to be, and all of my possessions travel safely with me.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's just a big barrier that people
Yeah.
need to jump.
Yeah, and that's cool. That is something that you can deal with, even something practical like that. It doesn't always have to be this super, I don't know, super amazing thing you're manifesting. Maybe you just catch that, hey, you are a little bit worried about safety, and then you can deal with that on the level of manifestation. That's cool.
Yeah, definitely. This year, so I took 3 trips this year, and all of them I really, worked on the manifestations I needed for them. For one, I needed no delays whatsoever, or else I was going to miss classes. It was right in the middle of midterms, and I was scheduling this wedding trip for a friend, and I just, I needed it to work perfectly, and it did. And then another trip, I needed the ticket to be a certain price. And I found it online for less than half of what all of the other tickets were for that time period, which was around the holidays. I found it for $222, and I
Oh, wow.
round trip ticket through LAX. So I was amazed. Well, on that particular trip, I was late. So I missed the bus by literally 2 minutes. I could practically see it. I was like, I bet it's right there, turning onto Broadway, So I missed the bus. And I got to the airport, got to the baggage counter. First of all, the lines were so long, and I was like, okay, it's okay, it's okay. And then this lady said, oh, do you have your boarding pass on your phone? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, you go to this line. And it had 6 people in it. So I was like, yes. And then I got to the counter, and I scanned it, and it said, flight canceled. And I was like, I just looked. This flight isn't canceled. And the girl behind the counter looked for me, and she said it was just now canceled. She got me on a flight that was half an hour later. If she had checked my bags any earlier, the bags would not have made it with me on that flight. And it all worked out. So even being late is still happening correctly. So my formula for law of attraction anyway is the really basic one where you ask, then you believe, and then you receive. And the receiving is an active expectation that everything is working out correctly, even when it seems to be going wrong. You have to think, it's all going right, it's all going right.